The United States of America, the land of opportunity. For hundreds of years, people have come to this great country to pursue their dreams. Many of the most successful companies in the world were started here in our country's earliest days. A big reason for the success of American business is that in this country, business owners have enjoyed the right to grow the business they wanted. Today, however, the list of rights that business owners have is shrinking, and the list of responsibilities is growing. It would take me days to list off the rules that businesses need to follow. The Code of Federal Regulations is 165,000 pages long and contains tens of thousands of rules about every kind of business you can think of. Where did it start? How did we get here? It's a fascinating story, and it goes back all the way to a horrific accident caused by steam. In the early days of the 1800s, there were no highways. If you wanted to transport cargo, you probably put it in a flat-bottomed boat and pushed it along the river with long paddles and oars.
It's important to remember that roads were virtually non-existent in the United States. What they called roads were often dirt tracks. In some parts of the country, they used to corduroy roads, which means they would fell trees and then lay the stumps crossways along the road. You can imagine what a wonderful smooth ride that was on a buckboard. Roads were not the way to get around.
In 1812, an inventor named John Fulton introduced the first steamboat to America. It was a boat that could travel much faster and could go up rivers as well as down.
The steamboat changed everything. The steamboat allowed you to go both ways on this incredible system of inland waterways.
Business boomed. The steamboats multiplied. Competition among steamboat companies was fierce, and if you wanted to earn business, you had to make a name for yourself. And that could be dangerous. Professor Canfield explains.
You needed speed. So they used high-pressure engines instead of low-pressure engines. So you got more power per weight of the engine. The problem? They blow up.
Unfortunately, steamboat explosions were very common. Dozens were killed when the boiler aboard the Ben Franklin exploded in 1836. In 1837, passengers burned to death aboard the Ben Sherrod while racing another steamboat. The boiler overheated, causing the woodpile to catch fire and burn the ship. A year later, the steamboat Orinoco exploded after its flue collapsed. Nearly 100 passengers were killed.
When a steamboat blew up, and they didn't blow up just in races, they blew up for lots of reasons. When a steamboat blew up, recognize that you've got these enormous high-pressure boilers pretty much in the middle of the boat. And the firebox is full of wood that's burning at very high heat. And the whole boat is made of wood. This is not a safe combination. So when the boilers would blow, first they'd shatter the superstructure. They'd scatter it all over the place. And much of it would be, people would be encased in a cloud of steam. If you breathed it, you were gone. If you didn't breathe it, it might be worse, because then you'd be burned desperately and it may be days before you would die.
The public was growing weary of all the deadly accidents, most of which were happening because of carelessness. And then, the final straw, the deadliest steamboat explosion in U.S. history. It seemed like a normal day on the Cincinnati waterfront. Water ripples moved through the water as steamboats passed, carrying passengers and their cargo to their destinations. But the ripples would soon turn into waves, and the boats would turn into shrapnel, and the passengers, well, many would not be found at all, because this normal day was about to become anything but normal. The fastest steamboat on the Ohio River was called the Moselle. She was gaining fame for setting several speed records, and her captain was determined to keep that reputation at any cost, because everyone knew that the fastest boats made the most money. On the afternoon of April 25, 1838, the captain of the Moselle was talked into racing another steamboat. The boilers were stoked to maximum levels. According to the newspaper account, the engineer warned the captain that pressure levels were too high. The boilers could blow. The captain replied that he would risk it. As the Moselle pushed away from the landing, the unthinkable happened. All 4 boilers exploded at once. Bodies and fragments of bodies were thrown both to the Kentucky and Ohio shores. Newspapers described the aftermath in horrifying detail.
The bodies of many of the unfortunate passengers are dreadfully mangled. One of them cut in 2, another divided in 5 or 6 parts, and several mutilated in various manners too shocking to relate. A stick of wood was driven through the head of one man.
Over 200 people were killed in the explosion. As the newspaper put it,
language would fail us in an attempt to depict the horror of the scene. We have no disposition to attempt any relation of the numberless tales of anguish and sorrow.
the mayor of Cincinnati convened the city council. They demanded that the United States Congress do something. How could they allow the irresponsible carelessness of one steamboat captain to cause so much death and destruction? Congress agreed and immediately passed the Steamboat Safety Act. The law required that steamboat boilers be inspected every 6 months. The Moselle disaster had a significant impact on the rights and responsibilities of business operators because it was the first time the federal government passed a law regulating a private business. But it would not be the last. A devastating mine explosion killed more than 100 miners in 1891. The Congress responded by creating the Mine Safety and Health Administration for making rules about mine safety. Increasing industrial pollution led to the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, which today has over 17,000 full-time employees and makes thousands of rules. Food poisoning has been a terrible source of tragedy.
Good evening. The E. coli epidemic took another prisoner today.
He died Sunday from E. coli poisoning.
Congress established the Food and Drug Administration to make sure that business do not carelessly sell us food that will make us sick. More recently, the carelessness of an oil company caused an oil well to burst at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, killing 11 workers and polluting the entire Gulf. Lawmakers are still trying to decide what laws should be passed to make sure that never happens ever again. Today, hundreds of federal agencies and commissions have created more than 1 million rules and regulations. According to American Spectator, the federal government creates a new rule every 2 hours and 9 minutes. Hopefully, these rules are making us safer. All of these rules make it really hard to run a business. Even President Obama seems to agree.
Now, there's no question that some regulations are outdated, unnecessary, or too costly. We got rid of one rule from 40 years ago that could have forced some dairy farmers to spend $10,000 a year proving that they could contain a spill because milk was somehow classified as an oil. I'm confident a farmer can contain a milk spill without a federal agency looking over his shoulder. But I will not back down from making sure an oil company can contain the kind of oil spill we saw in the Gulf 2 years ago.
Thinking back to 1838 and the horrible disaster that killed so many people on the Moselle, it seems clear to me that Congress had to do something to make sure such a thing would never happen again. But I bet they had no idea that one rule would turn into 1 million rules, including how to clean up spilled milk. I think there should be rules and regulations to keep us safe, but there should be a balance. Where life and death is not at stake, the federal government should trust businesses to exercise their rights responsibly, and businesses need to act responsibly. Over 200 people were killed in the explosion.